Well, welcome back, folks. If you were here last week, then you probably saw me build this firewood rack. I took some old pallet racking that I had laying behind the barn, cut it up, re-welded it back together, and I come up with this right here. I think it'll hold a fair amount of wood. It seems pretty strong, but I was really worried about how tippy it was. I had some ideas for that, and a lot of you viewers made some great suggestions in the comments on how I could stiffen it up and pick it up with the forks of the skid loader without much risk of it tipping over. So I want to make a few of those changes before I proceed. And then once that's done, I need to get it loaded up, get this thing sat in front of the wood stove, and then determine whether or not I need to make more of it. First things first, I'm going to need some steel because I don't have what I need for this. All right.
Dig Drive DIY.
So the first thing that I need to do is head out on a little road trip because I wanted to try to keep this as low budget as possible, but I really don't have the correct material, the correct steel to make those fork pockets. There's this place out in the middle of nowhere that I always like to go visit when I get a chance or when I get an excuse to. It's called Cohart's, and they're a metal recycling and a salvage place, and they've always got a lot of interesting things there. So today was a perfect excuse to head over there and see what they've got, and hopefully they've got some. I think I want to do like a 6-inch by 2-inch tubing, and that should be perfect on there. But I'm just going to enjoy the 30-minute drive over there and see what they got. I was wondering if I wanted to get steel out there, do I just go out there and get it, or?
Yes, you'll go out, like where are you talking, like out in the thing, or?
I want some like tubing, some like 2x6 tubing.
You're gonna go to the furthest building over by the fence. The tin is the big where you jump off hot tins.
Okay.
You go right in there. Yep.
All right, I'll go over there. Thank you. Do like scrap. Huh. New steel. Hey there. Hi. I'm looking to get some box tubing, like to put forks in. So like a 6x2 or something like that. So we found a piece out back. They got a ton of this stuff out there. Look at that thing. That's huge. That'll work perfect. All right, well, $130 later, I got the 4 fork pockets. Let's hope that works. Okay, so the plan here is to have 2 pockets for the forks to go in underneath the firewood rack. Now I had to kind of decide how wide I wanted the pockets to be. So I stretched out the forks on the front of my skid loader to almost as wide as they go. It's the second to last notch, and that equaled about 32 inches. That looks like a pretty good width to me to be picking this up. I'll just have to ensure that I have the fork slid out to that width before I go to pick these things up. Pockets themselves are 36.5 inches long so that they fit underneath the rack. They're 8 inches wide and they're about 2.5 inches ID inside the pocket. So they're a little bit bigger than what I needed to, but these were in the scrapyard out back, so it made easy picking. What I'm gonna do is get those centered underneath the firewood rack, get the ends ground off so they're all ready to go. I'll get them centered, clamped into place, and I'm gonna weld those into position. And then I think what's gonna happen is I'm still gonna need to put feet underneath the outside edges of my rack. I've got some leftover center sections, but for right now, I want to get the center welded up. Then I could pick this up with a skid loader and set it down on my outside rails. The next thing we're going to do is I need to cut the pieces that I'm going to use for the ends. And I think I'm going to use something like this right here. I'm going to use this because it fits nicely and I think it'll work great. But I got to go cut them. And I don't feel like dragging out the plasma cutter, so I'm going to use something a little bit different. Anytime that I'm going to be welding a bunch or grinding a bunch, I try to put on clothes that I've already ruined once. So instead of ruining stuff that isn't got a bunch of holes in it, this does. Let's try this once. All right, I haven't had this thing running in a long time, and I barely ever use it to cut metal, but I thought it might be worth a shot. Not bad for using once every couple of years. I'm going to get this all welded up and we'll give it a test drive. All right, I think everything's welded up. It's definitely a lot more stable, but okay, I'm gonna get the forks in here and pick it up and we'll see what it looks like. Probably ought to shoot a little paint on these welds. Now it can't fall over on me. We can put our wood up really high now. All right. Well, I really think that that's going to solve our tippy problem. This thing feels really secure. I don't think it's an issue of it falling off the forks. The only issue we have left now is will the wood fall off the rack because I tilt it too much or I go over too many bumps. That'll be interesting to see. A lot of people commented that they were worried about this gusset. Well, this gusset is designed so that it's in between the two rows of wood. So I'll have a row here that'll go right behind it and a row on this side. So it really shouldn't be too big of a factor that causes any issue. And then the center of this row will obviously be stacked up right against here. And a lot of folks thought maybe I should take it out to the end. Well, we'll find out. Next thing is to, I'm going to touch up a few welds and shoot a little paint, but then we're going to get the Eastimate axis out, move it across the road and start splitting some wood. And let's fill this thing up and see if I can move it. Well, obviously it has taken me a few minutes to get everything over here. Brought the splitter across and the wood rack with the skid loader. And then I loaded my chainsaws and gas and supplies I'm gonna need on the golf cart, and I have it over here too. But I think I'm ready to start. The pile's a little bit mixed. I've got some chainsaw work that needs to be done. The only question that remains now is how long is it gonna take me to fill the rack? And then can I carry the rack completely full back across the road? I legitimately have no idea how this is gonna go, so it'll be interesting. All right, I'll get at it. It's almost time for lunch, so I might have to stop here quick. About a quarter of the way. Quarter of the way through. I brought the IBC tote basket over here to put some oddball shaped pieces in that don't stack very well. But just took a little break for lunch. It sure is nice being close to home and just a golf cart away from going over there and get whatever I need from the shop and whatnot. But I was thinking over lunch that whenever I make a firewood video, then inevitably someone down in the comments says something to the effect of, "Oh my gosh, that's so much work. It'd never be worth it. Oh, you have propane backup too? Then I would just buy propane and heat my house with propane. I wouldn't fool with all this stuff." And I get it. I understand that this looks like a waste of time to a lot of people, and they wonder, is it worth it? I oftentimes wonder, is all this even worth it? Because there's a lot of investment between, the skid loader and the splitter. And now granted, YouTube has afforded me some of those things, and it's made it so that being a little bit more frivolous in my firewood process can be justified, I guess. But there's a couple things I think about when people say, is it worth it or it's a waste of time? And number one is the act of something being a waste of time is very subjective to whoever that person is. I might argue that watching professional sports on TV is a waste of time. Every time I sit and watch a game or something, unless it's a big event, I feel like, boy, I could probably be more productive with my time. But I don't fault anyone that wants to watch sports. That's their prerogative. That's up to them. I'm not much of a hunter, but there's tons of people close to me that love to hunt. And I get it. There's something rewarding about going out in the woods and hunting. To me, that wouldn't be a good use of my time. That's just not something I prefer. So everybody's got different interests. And I think splitting wood could almost be considered a hobby. But as far as is it worth it or not, now you might be able to pencil out the money side of it to see if all this effort is really worth paying for propane. But I oftentimes think of this as the same as a baker. Is it worth going to all the effort to bake cookies when you could just go to the store and buy pre-made cookies, or baking a cake, or any food for that matter? Is it worth cooking at home when you can just jump in the car and go to a restaurant, have someone prepare and do it for you? There's an element of doing it yourself. There's an element of the reward of a job well done. There's an element of making something and getting the benefit of it that is something we need as humans. And sometimes when we look at something like chopping firewood to heat our home, we can look at that as archaic, maybe, yes, but there's an element of it that we're starting to miss more and more. And I think that's just the reward of, you can heat your home by a product of your own effort and labor. And to me, that's fulfilling, And that's what I enjoy. This is my form of exercise. This is my form of, I sit at a desk all day during the week. I still work a day job where I'm at a desk most of the time. So this is my excuse to get out and about and do something I enjoy. And plus it helps me to justify some of these toys and some of the frivolous things I've got. So yeah, we get to heat the house, the garage, and the shop with all this effort and trouble, but I don't spend a lot of time in the house watching TV or going hunting. Not that there's anything wrong with any of that. Everyone should find what they love and do it. And that's my point. I don't know, are you with me or are you against me? Do you understand what I'm saying and could enjoy the labor of love, or do you think this is a waste of time? If it's the latter, I don't know what you're doing watching this video, but I appreciate you being here regardless. I'm gonna get back to work, see if I can get this rack filled up. That was my little rant for today. I don't do that too often, but there it was. Well, I'd say it's full. There's a little bit more room at the top, but I don't know if I should push it. All right, so obviously the only thing left is to see if I can pick it up, which I think I can, but then see if I can carry it clear over to the house without dropping it. Now, one of my concerns I had the other day was how am I gonna see through the stack while I got it picked up with a skid loader? Well, one option is just to go backwards the whole way, and I kind of eliminate that. So I will be going backwards probably the majority of the way over there. Option one, I could go backwards. I was gonna put a piece of 12-inch tile near 3/4 of the way through the stack, thereby creating a porthole that I could look through while I was in the skid loader. And I was gonna do that, but I felt like it was gonna really hamper my ability to stack it well there towards the top. And I didn't want that in there. I didn't feel comfortable with that. I do have one other option too, and that is since I make YouTube videos, I have a remote connection to a camera that's up on top. With that camera right there, I can essentially see myself. So that's gonna act kind of like my rearview mirror. I'm gonna use that while I'm driving, and I can go forward too. So I've got a little cheat. Plus, I'll have a drone in the sky most likely to see where I'm going. But the question is, will this be stable enough to make it? Well, let's find out. Okay, let's go. If I drop it, it's coming through the glass. Whoa, it's already tipping. Feel that bad. It's not riding too bad. Plus I can kind of see through there a little bit. Did I hit the drone? Oh man. I think it's okay. I made it. You know, it really wasn't that bad. The worst part was obviously getting through the ditch, and I picked a steeper spot than the other driveway. Would have been less steep if I'd have chosen to go that way, but it wouldn't have been as good for backing around the circle to drive into where I did here. And the second thing is that there's enough flex in the forks and the structure that none of the bouncing from the tracks or none of the bumps from the skid loader really affected the stack. In other words, everything kind of had a built-in shock absorber. It was kind of easy swaying. So kind of like the way a building's meant to sway in the wind, you know, nothing was real harsh and abrasive. So I feel confident I could carry that a pretty good ways and not have it fall out. Now, a lot of that is dependent upon how it's stacked in there. And I was being pretty conscious of how I was arranging and stacking things so that they'd kind of wedge together. And probably over time, as the wood would settle and dry out, it might get looser. I don't know if it'd get tighter or looser over time. But anyway, my plan now is to build a second rack just like this because I got enough material for a second one. And that way I could be over there splitting and get another rack completely stacked. And then I could either start to use this one up and swap them out, or I could put this one in first, put the other one in. You know, I could arrange them over here is what I'm trying to say to work. So as far as compared to IBC totes, I think that's more than 2 totes, maybe 2. I don't know. I could argue there might be a third tote in there. I need to figure up how many cords of wood are in this thing. Maybe you could do that for me. It's 36 inches wide. It is 7.5 feet tall to that rail across the top. And it is just a little bit over, it's about 8.5 feet long. I don't know. Let me know if I'm wrong about that. I always get confused. Cord, Rick, face cord, rank. Anyway, all I know is I want to thank you so much for clicking on this video. I hope that you liked it. And if I'm lucky, I'll see you in the next one. We won't be cutting wood, probably. I do have to clean up leaves, though.